All right, so ready to dive into a real pain.
Definitely. Jesse Eisenberg's 2024 film,
Yeah.
where he's both starring and directing.
Exactly. And let me tell you, we've been digging through reviews, and this doesn't seem like your average comedy.
Yeah, I was seeing that. It's getting described as, like, painfully funny, which, honestly, I'm not sure what to make of that yet.
Right. Intriguing, though.
For sure.
So, basics. Two cousins, David, that's Eisenberg, and Benji, played by Kieran Culkin.
Culkin, yeah.
They head to Poland to honor their grandmother. Seems simple enough, but
But their relationship is a bit of a mess, it seems.
that's putting it lightly from what I've read. They're dealing with their own issues while trying to, connect with their family history.
It's like that idea of baggage we all carry, right?
Ooh, good point. One review actually mentioned how the film explores guilt and identity, those things we maybe try to bury or weirdly are even drawn to.
That is weird when you think about it. Like, why are we fascinated by the darker stuff sometimes?
I don't know, but it makes you think. So we're not just talking lighthearted comedy here. There's some real depth.
Seems so. There's this scene in a Holocaust museum that critics are mentioning. Apparently it's handled really sensitively, which, if Eisenberg can pull that off, really says something about his directing.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. So he's got a lot on his plate, writing, directing, starring. Do the reviews think he can handle all that?
Most seem to think so, yeah. He's being praised for balancing the humor and the heavier emotional stuff. One review even called it like a therapy session disguised as a buddy comedy. I thought that was funny.
Huh, that's a good one. Makes you wonder how much of Eisenberg's own life is in this story.
Right.
I mean, even the title, A Real Pain, feels kind of personal, doesn't it?
It does. Speaking of personal, we got to talk about Culkin's performance.
Oh, yeah, that's what everyone's raving about.
Like, seriously raving. One even said it's Oscar-worthy.
Wow, okay.
Apparently, he brings this surprising vulnerability to the role, alongside his usual, witty side.
Yeah. Which, I guess, isn't something we always see from him. So maybe this film is pushing some boundaries, too, in terms of what we expect from a comedy.
Could be.
Okay, so we've got the premise, the acting. What about the overall feel of the movie? What are the reviewers saying about that?
Visually, it sounds pretty interesting. They're praising the cinematography. Apparently, it contrasts these peaceful landscapes with some more chaotic scenes, kind of reflecting what the characters are going through emotionally.
Oh, that's cool. And what about the music? Any mention of that?
Oh, yeah, there's a piano score. Reviewers call it hauntingly beautiful. So I'm guessing it plays a big part in setting the mood.
Makes sense. It's all starting to come together now, nuanced performances, those striking visuals, a carefully chosen score.
It seems very deliberate, yeah.
Like Eisenberg's really crafting a specific experience here, but not everyone's completely on board, right?
Right. Some reviewers mentioned the pacing feels uneven and the ending is kind of ambiguous.
Oh, interesting. Ambiguous how?
Well, they don't really say, because guess we'll have to see for ourselves. But some actually see that as a strength. Like the film's willing to be messy and leave things open-ended. Makes it more realistic, they argue.
I can kind of see that. It's like life, right? Not everything gets tied up in a neat little bow.
Exactly. But there's one other criticism that keeps popping up that we should definitely talk about. It seems like there's this tension.
Oh, right. The thing with the Polish characters.
Yeah. The film encourages engaging with Polish culture and people, but then uses the Polish characters mainly for a joke at the end.
Right. So is it really living up to its own message about authenticity? It's definitely something to think about. This film seems to be full of these thought-provoking contradictions.
And that's what makes this deep dive so important, right? We're not just talking about a movie, we're talking about these bigger ideas, culture, representation, how we deal with difficult stuff. Makes for a much richer conversation, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We're going beyond the surface here. But okay, I'm curious. Since we're talking about visuals, what are the reviewers saying about how Eisenberg portrays this idea of real pain visually? I mean, he's got this great setting and the cinematography seems to be playing a big part, but what else is going on?
One thing that's being highlighted is his use of close-ups. Like, he's not afraid to just linger on the characters' faces, let us see all the emotions they're going through no matter how raw they are.
Ooh, I get it. It's like he's making us confront those emotions too.
Exactly. And speaking of confronting things head on, there's also this interesting use of silence in the film. Like, Eisenberg isn't afraid to let moments breathe. you know?
Oh, yeah, I remember a reviewer mentioning that. It's like he's trusting us, the audience, to engage with the story on a deeper level, to fill in the gaps ourselves.
Exactly. He's not spelling everything out for us. He's inviting us into the story, into the characters' minds,
Yeah.
which I think is what makes it so compelling.
Yeah, I'm starting to see why this film is getting so much attention. It's more than just a comedy about two cousins on a trip.
It's a story about grief, identity, searching for meaning. And it sounds like Eisenberg's using every tool he has, humor, heart, visuals to tell it.
And even though it might not be perfect, it's sparking these important conversations and leaving a lasting impression on people. I'm definitely intrigued. I'd love to dig into what people are saying about how this film resonates with them on a personal level.
Me too. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Definitely. But we've covered a lot of ground already, haven't we?
We have.
So let's move on to part 2 of our deep dive into A Real Pain. We'll be back after a quick break to explore those audience reactions and more.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we're back and still diving deep into A Real Pain. Before the break, we were talking about how the film balances these heavy themes with, well, humor. What are people saying about how that actually works?
You know, a lot of the reviews use that phrase, laugh out loud funny. But it doesn't sound like, typical slapstick stuff.
Yeah, what's the humor like then?
It's more about the awkwardness of family, how we try to connect even when it's uncomfortable.
Right, right. Like we've all been there. And speaking of family dynamics, there was this dinner table scene that some reviewers mentioned.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Hmm.
Eisenberg has this big speech, and apparently it really hits home for a lot of people.
What's it about? What makes it so powerful?
It's hard to say without, spoiling it.
Yeah.
But it seems to tap into some universal truths about family, things we all relate to.
Makes you think. So again, Eisenberg seems to be going for authenticity here, even with the humor.
It seems so.
It's like he's saying, hey, life is messy, and sometimes that's funny.
Yeah, exactly. And remember what we were saying about his confidence as a director? That scene's a good example. He lets those actors really inhabit the moment, and the result is this, raw emotion that resonates with people.
Yeah, I'm getting that sense. Whether it's the visuals, the music, or how he directs his actors, Eisenberg seems to be all about honesty, showing us the real deal.
I agree. Which brings us back to that criticism about the Polish characters.
Oh, right, yeah. If this film is all about authenticity, then why does it fall short there?
That's the question a lot of people are asking. It's like the film is having this conversation with itself, pushing us to confront uncomfortable truths, but then getting called out for its own blind spots. It's kind of fascinating, actually.
It is, yeah. Like, the film itself is a journey of self-discovery, not just for the characters, but for us, the audience, too. Makes you think about your own biases, your own assumptions.
Absolutely. And that's honestly what we're all about here, right? Giving you the information, the different perspectives so you can form your own opinions.
Exactly. We're not here to tell you what to think, but to help you think for yourself.
So for those listening, as you're watching A Real Pain, think about that. The questions of authenticity, representation. Where do you see the film succeeding? Where do you see it falling short? And how does that connect to your own life?
Yeah, great point. It's a complex issue, no easy answers, but that's what makes it so worth discussing. Okay, so we've covered the humor, the family dynamics, the representation thing, but there's one more big element we got to talk about before we wrap up.
The ending.
The ending. That ambiguous ending everyone's either loving or hating.
Yeah, it seems like a real pointed division.
What do you make of it? From what you've read, I mean. Do you think it works?
It's tough to say without seeing it myself, but I do think it's a bold move by Eisenberg.
Yeah.
He could have easily given us, a happy ending, everything tied up neatly. But instead, he leaves things open to interpretation, which, again, I think goes back to that idea of embracing the messiness of life. Sometimes there are no clear answers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, he's inviting us to keep thinking about the film even after it's over, to draw our own conclusions.
Exactly. And maybe even to look for those open endings in our own lives, the questions that don't have easy answers.
I like that. It's like the film is a starting point, not a destination. It's sparking these conversations, these reflections, and that's pretty cool, I think.
It is. It's more than just entertainment. It's an experience.
Okay, so final thoughts here. If you had to sum up A Real Pain in a few sentences, what would you say? What are the big takeaways for our listeners?
A Real Pain is a film that stays with you. It's funny, it's moving, it's honest. It might make you uncomfortable at times, but that's okay. That discomfort means it's challenging you, pushing you to grow. And that's a good thing.
I love that. So, to everyone listening, if you're looking for a film that's both entertaining and thought-provoking, something that will stay with you long after the credits roll, A Real Pain is definitely worth checking out. And when you do, let us know what you think.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right, so that's A Real Pain, a film that's, well, clearly generating a lot of buzz. And as we always say here on the Deep Dives, don't just take our word for it, go see it for yourself.
Exactly. Form your own opinions, have those conversations, keep diving deep.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
We'll see you next time.
We've really gone in deep on this one.
I have. Eisenberg's directing, the way he mixes humor with these raw, emotional moments.
Yeah, and using Poland as more than just a setting, like it's part of the story itself.
Right. And we even talked about, those criticisms about representation, which I think shows just how much this film makes you think.
It's definitely got people talking, that's for sure.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive thing so interesting, right? It's more than just, here's what happened in the movie.
Exactly. We're breaking it down, picking it apart, seeing how it connects to these bigger ideas. And hopefully you listening are right there with us, thinking about all this stuff too.
Yeah, we want you to come away from this with a better understanding of the film, but also maybe a better understanding of yourself.
Because when it comes down to it, A Real Pain is about facing those tough emotions that we usually try to avoid.
It's like leaning into the pain. The title's right there.
And figuring out how to, get through it, maybe even learn something from it.
And sometimes laughing along the way.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, is kind of what the film does, too.
It's funny. One thing that kept coming up in the reviews was how many people said they felt like the film really got them, like it was speaking directly to their own lives.
That's what good art does, right?
Yeah.
It makes you feel less alone.
Totally. And I think that's what Eisenberg's trying to do here. He's not giving us easy answers. He's making us face the messiness of it all and maybe find something beautiful in that.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question. What does real pain mean to you?
Yeah, what are some of the ways you've learned to deal with those tough feelings? Have you ever found that humor can actually help? Or maybe, that facing the hard stuff head on, not running away from it, that's how you grow.
Those are the kinds of questions A Real Pain makes us think about. And it doesn't give us the answers.
Which means we got to find them ourselves.
Exactly.
All right, well, if you're feeling brave, check out A Real Pain. Let it challenge you, move you, maybe even inspire you to, embrace your own real pain.
And hey, who knows, maybe it'll spark some interesting conversations with your friends and family too.
That's what we like to hear. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another exploration of something that makes us think. Until then, keep diving deep.
Keep diving.